I got to spend 8 years doing nothing but protecting the environment. I worked for the Environmental Enforcement Section of the Federal Justice Department. So I had the privilege of helping to enforce the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, which made a huge difference in this country. People forget that in 1970, before the Clean Water Act was passed, 2/3 of the lakes and rivers in America were considered unswimmable and unfishable. Those numbers improved dramatically after the Clean Water Act had been in effect for a while. It used to be that in major American cities, there were dozens, if not hundreds, of days a year where the air was unsafe to breathe. After the Clean Air Act had been in effect for a while, those numbers improved dramatically. And I was proud to be a part of that. I was proud to be lead counsel in the Love Canal case, where we went after the company that dumped tons and tons of pollutants in people's backyards in Niagara Falls, New York. And we got the company that dumped the stuff to repay the taxpayers $129 million of the cost of cleaning up that site. Now we face another huge environmental challenge, the challenge of stopping global warming, which here in Oregon threatens our farms, our forests, our coastal cities, and our hydropower system. And it's going to be tough to deal with this. We have to reduce our carbon emissions dramatically. We have to reduce carbon emissions by 80% by 2050, the scientists tell us. Where does the carbon come from? Well, about 30% comes from transportation, from driving. About 30% comes from industrial activity, which is a combination of vehicles that burn fuel and also electricity. And about 40% of our carbon emissions come from the power we use in buildings, for heating, for cooling, for running washing machines and water heaters. And the reason that cars produce carbon is they run on gasoline. And the reason that using electricity produces carbon is that 50% of our electricity comes from coal. And another 20% comes from natural gas, which isn't as carbon intensive. It's a little better, but still produces carbon. So what do we need to do? Well, it'd be nice if we drove less. The best way to do that is make it convenient for people to drive less by having mass transit, by having subways that take people places. That's going to require a big investment. We need to do it. We also need to have more energy efficient cars. We need to raise the fuel efficiency standards for automobiles. We're doing that. We need to ask Detroit to work harder and do an even better job of it. We also need to invest in conservation. There was a recent study that showed that if we built more energy efficient buildings, we could reduce carbon emissions by 28%. So we need to require new buildings to be more energy efficient. That's going to cost a little more at the front end, but it pays for itself over time because you have a lower electric bill. And we also need to make serious investments in developing renewable energy in order to make solar power and wind power and wave energy more cost competitive, to make it competitive with coal. And that's going to require a big fat investment. And for one thing, in order to take advantage of the wind energy potential of Wyoming, we need to build not only the wind farms, but new transmission lines from Wyoming to California to carry the power. There was an article in Scientific American recently that outlined a 40-year, $420 billion plan to shift 2/3 of our electricity to solar by, as far as I could tell, covering the entire state of Arizona with solar panels and then coming up with a transmission infrastructure to carry that power to the rest of the country. I don't know if that specific plan would really work exactly as they say. That's the scale in which we need to be thinking. It's going to be tough. It's going to require an investment of resources, but it's something we absolutely need to do.